Hello and welcome to another SisterA video. This is week 3, adding more HTML and CSS instructions. Well, last week we started our home page, we put our content in it, and ended up with something like this. Let's continue. Alright, this activity has us starting out by checking out some of these important parts that were covered by Khan Academy. So make sure that you've done those before you start this assignment. There's a video so that you can watch and get some extra help, the one that we're talking right now, adding more HTML and CSS. And then you're going to, of course, every week when we work on this, you're going to review your wireframe. It talks about semantics. Well, there's some tags that are what's called semantic, and we did some of those last week, and so you might want to review those. But let's get down to the nitty-gritty. The first thing it tells you is the internal links, which we did last time. If you look over here, those internal links are what allow you to move from page to page to page. Now we're going to do some links that are external links. So that's the important part. That's where we're actually starting out this week. Some external links. Well, we don't want these to go outside of our website because they are all part of our website. So you're going to choose 3 social media sites that you want to use for your website, and you're going to put those in your asset folder, and you're going to be able to then hook them to their actual website. You can use any of these that are here, or you can find other social media icons to use, and I have some set aside that I like to use, these neon looking ones. So I've already saved those to my desktop, so I can easily drag them over here. I'm going to choose Facebook and Twitter. And the last one I like to use is YouTube. And the reason I choose these is a business probably would have a Facebook page or a Twitter page to follow them on, and you might want to have some videos of going down the rapids on YouTube. So those are the 3 I have chosen to use on my page. And we're going to have 2 things that we're going to use. Each one is going to consist of a link and an image. So I'm going to borrow one of these up here, and it doesn't matter which one I borrow because I'm going to change the content, and I'm going to put it down here. Right after that, I'm going to put an image, so I can gather any of these image ones. I'll just grab that one. All right. And then, first one I'm going to choose to do, go back over to my assets. I'll do Facebook first. Remember, you click on it, copy the URL, and this is going to be the image. So I'm going to click on this one and replace the link with this one. I'm going to give it an alt name of Facebook. And then I'm going to make the link work. Colon, slant, www.facebook.com, and the .html goes away. Now this closing A does not go right here, right after the A. It goes after the image. Now if I go back over there and look, it will show. So now if I click on that, it takes me to Facebook. Cool. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to give each one of these a class. There's going to be a class here in the link line, and we're going to go class equals social media, and put a space. We want it to take us to an outside link. So all we have to do for that is add this target equals blank attribute. So I'm just going to copy that and put that right after the class of social media. And one more thing, in the image line, we're also going to give it a class. Class equals, and this one's going to be icon. So it's going to be a class of icon. That way we can size it. The social media will let us put some spacing in between, some padding, and voila, that is a complete set. Now all I have to do is make 2 more of those. Once you get one that's perfect, it's easy to do the other 2. All right, so now we're not going to change anything except the website, and instead of Facebook, this one's going to be Twitter. I don't have to change anything else on that, just Twitter. And we're going to now go get the image of the little birdie. And on the image portion, we just replace this. And one last thing, instead of saying Facebook, this one's going to say Twitter. Not the class, but the alt name. And we do the last one. This one's going to be YouTube. So you don't have to change anything except that one word. Get the URL for the image. And grab this area. And tell it now if I go back over there onto my page, I have 3 different ones. They all go to their respective sites, and I have finished that portion. And we're ready to go on to part 2. All right, welcome back to part 2. At the very first, it's telling you to look up here at the top of your code to this one little line right here. That is a link to our external style sheet. And if you notice right here, you should have one called style.css. If for some reason in creating this, you didn't get a style sheet, very easy to do. Click on New File, turn this into one, style.css, and tell it to add the file. Simple. So if you don't already have this, go through that step right there, and you'll be given this style sheet. And that link is really important because it allows this HTML page of code to talk to the CSS page of code. And the difference between HTML and CSS is the HTML is like the skeleton, and the CSS, it gives it color, it gives its life. If you did not have that link, the two pages couldn't talk to each other, and it would stay forever plain like this. When your CSS page is created, it might already have a few things in it. It's important that you clear them all out. We're going to give our navigation a little bit of color. So first, I'm going to give the navigation NAV, put a curly bracket and a closing curly bracket. I always put my curly brackets first. And then I'm going to say background color. And I'm going to make the background color that pretty blue that you saw on my site plan. And that is 70D1FF with, don't forget the number sign. Always put in CSS, always, 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 a semicolon at the end. I'm choosing the background color of that pretty blue. Looks really nice. That's my navigation bar. And then I want to change the color of the words, and I'm going to put those as white. Those don't go here in the nav, they go in the nav A. NAV, one space, A. And I'm going to do it white. And we go back over here, and there you go. All right, the next thing it's having us do, and you must do this, for section 2, go back over here, the requirement is you give it a background color that is different than the regular background color around it. I can't just do that. If I give it a background color, right here's the second row, I give it a background color. Now what it's going to do is it's going to change all of them. So I need to give this one a class name, an ID or a class. I'm going to give it a class name. Inside the section tag, not outside of it, I give it a class equals, and the name you're going to give it is section 2, sec2. Why? Because it's short. It's like an abbreviated form. And it still ends in slant section. So that's all I have to do for that. Then we go over to the style sheet. And I'm going to give it some lines here. I'm going to give it a sec2. I'm going to give it the same color that I have for my nav, same background color. So since it's going to be that same color, all I have to do is copy that line, copy and paste will be your friend. You won't forget your semicolons. So now when I go back and look at it, it's got the blue there and the blue up there. Looking good, huh? We're going to give all of the headlines a particular color. All of them. So we do that in one fell swoop. So we go H1, comma, H2, and so on. H3, H4, H5, H6. Now, there are not more than 6 headline sizes. But you can make any of the headline sizes bigger or smaller than what it's normally going to be. That's how you do it, by giving it a class or an ID. All right, so we're going to give each one of these a particular color, and I'm going to give them that color that I used for my background, you'll see why, because I'm going to make my page background a color that will really accentuate it. You can use the one that's here. You can use the color that goes with yours. And if you see, then it made my headlines all that color, but look what it did to number 2. I can't see it. So in order to give section 2 a color that will be able to be seen, I have to give section 2 only. In the H and in the P, I have to give it a class. You'll be real good at this by the time you're done with this class. Of H for headline and spec for special. And then if I use that, then I can give it the color that I want. And the same thing here. But instead of H spec, it's going to be P spec for paragraph special. Then I go back over to the style sheet and I go dot for class and dot pspec. And then I'm going to give it the same background color that I gave in my navigation, which is kind of a white. So I'll be able to see them again. And now I can see them again. And that's what this part is telling you to do. In instruction 10, we wanted to have a reasonable width. And this is a requirement that you set your page width. So in order to do that, we have to create using a div, a wrapper, so to speak. And so come up here to before the header, right after body. And so we're going to give it a div with an ID, because there's only going to be one of them. ID means there's just one on a page, and we only expect to make one. And we're going to call it content. So it's going to be all of the content on the page. And we're going to take the ending and remove it from there and put it down here just before the closing body. It'll be the last thing before the body ends. Now there's nothing there yet, so it hasn't, changed. So now we have to tell it in our style sheet, and I like to put my content way up at the top, and an ID has a hashtag. We're going to give this a width, and it's in the instructions, of 960 pixels, px. So we're going to add also, starting at 0 and going to auto. That moves it over away from the edge, and you'll have white on both sides. So we're going to add a class for section 3. Sec3, and we're going to do that same thing for section 1. Sec1. And we're now going to, in the style, now that those have a section, I'm going to come here right after section 2, and it tells us to make section 3 and that should center our text on section 3 only, and it did. And now we're going to give classes and IDs to our images so that we can size them. All right, so we're going to go to our first image, which is our logo, and in between image and SRC, source, SRC stands for source, we're going to give this one an ID, because any page will only have one logo, and it's going to be a logo. We're going to give this one banner ID. Actually, let's give this one a class, because you might want a different banner at the bottom or something. Then all I have to use is banner. And these two images we're also going to give a class. And the first one's going to be image 1, img 1, keeping it short. Oops, I have 2 G's there. And this one's going to be image 2. Now, I go back to my style sheet, and I'm going to give each one of those a size. I'm going to control the size of my logo, which will be logo, and this one I'm going to say 200 pixels wide. And we're going to do the same thing with the banner, dot banner, but we're going to give it a width. Now that we sized our page, it's easy. We're going to tell it we want it to be 100% of the width of the page. And the other two, image 1 and image 2, and I'm going to give those a width of 450 and a height of 350. You can see that everything is behaving itself on the main part of the page. Although I do notice this is kind of tall, so maybe I might want to give my banner an actual height. So now my pictures are all sized except for the social media at the bottom. If you notice, there's no space in between those. I want to give it a padding of 10 to 15 pixels. I'm going to say 15 on mine. You size it on the icon, the image itself. That's why we had to do both of those names instead of just one. And I'm going to give that a width and a height of like 75 pixels, because they're going to be small. And a height of 75. Beautiful. Now notice everything's still on the left, and it will be at the end of this. We're just laying the foundation. All right, so a couple more things. Inside this paragraph tag, give it a space, and go ID equals info, info. And that way we can give a size, the text, we can give it a certain font, we can do things to it. And right now we're going to give it a font size of 18 pixels. Page looks pretty good. Now I want to get rid of these underlines and these dots. Up here in the nav A, we're going to tell it text decoration. None. We go and look at it, and it took away the underline. Now we need to get rid of the dot. And in order to do that, we have to create another part. We're splitting the nav into parts. And this will be for the LI portion of it. And this one you're going to say list dash style type. And we're going to say none. And what that does is it gets rid of the pesky dot. Couple more things. Up here in the H's, we gave it a color. We're also going to give it a padding of 10 pixels. And we're going to center it. And we're going to also set up our paragraphs. There are no P1, P2, P3, and so on. You'll see that our headlines are like that. But if you notice, see how these like hug the edge, and they're difficult to read on the edge. So the reason we're going to give these guys a padding, it takes them away from the edge of the page. And you can also give it a color if you want a different color. Now, one thing I am going to do, and I love doing this on my page, I'm going to make my background color for my whole page, except for section 2, is going to be black. And now my page has a sharp look to it. So I'm going to make my paragraphs a light color. So I'll make them this light blue, the same as the headlines. There we go. And that's my page at the end of week 3. We'll do more on the next video. But that ends it for week 3. Happy coding!